We have team coverage of the findings released today by the Dane County District's Attorney's Office on this busy day. We start tonight with NBC 15's investigative reporter Hannah Anderson. She's live at our courthouse.
We may never know why Anthony Tong opened fire in WTS Paradigm. However, today we learned new information about those 8 minutes, spanning from that initial call all the way to the moment that police made contact and shot Tong in the chest. Take a look at this newly released body cam footage we have here, showing the moments of Tong walking through the cubicles on September 19th. In this time, people were fleeing, officers were arriving at the scene. We also learned officers tried negotiating with Tong to put down his gun.
Today we learned that Tong suffered from a mental illness and he built his own gun that he used to shoot 4 of his co-workers.
He's in the back of the building. I've got a person down.
It's the first time we're seeing chilling video of the Middleton shooting. Here's shooter Anthony Tong walking through WTS Paradigm.
On September 19th, 2018, Middleton, Wisconsin, narrowly missed becoming yet another of America's mass killings when a gunman began firing on his co-workers.
The Dane County District Attorney revealed Tong suffered from schizophrenia and was actively seeking treatment at the time of the shooting. But they still don't know what led to him changing the lives of everyone there on September 19th.
Drop that gun now!
A completely unprovoked attack with the shooter standing up and beginning to shoot.
According to newly released investigation documents, not many WTS Paradigm employees spoke to Tong in the short time that he worked there. One witness told officials that Tong never shared any personal information.
The authorities in South Dakota who dealt with Mr. Tong did not report his mental health commitment.
Tong's mental illness wasn't documented in a national database after a run-in with police finding guns in his home in South Dakota and him acting, quote, paranoid. He told authorities that his co-workers at the time were talking badly about him. It's something that would have been flagged in a background check, but Tong didn't buy a gun. He bought parts and made his own.
As soon as it happened, they knew what to do and they did it.
Middleton Police Chief Chuck Falk knows what his officers did and knows their own mental health matters during this time. The officers are focusing on their own well-being as the department is preparing to reflect back on their response.
Clear, all clear.
Do you feel that the chapter's been closed now that you found out your officers won't be charged?
Yes and no. It's a big step. I don't know that this is something that will ever leave us, many of us. I think it's going to be a life-changing event.
This is the Paradigm building here in Middleton. It's a software company where almost 6 months ago, an employee inside that building opened fire on his coworkers, injuring 4 of them. But today was all about saying thank you. Paradigm played host to about 200 local law enforcement and first responders. They gave those first responders a little gift. It's a wooden box with some broken glass from that day inside that box. And we spoke with law enforcement who were there that day, and they say that little box means the world to them.
That box represents one day in the life of our community.
It was a lot of gratitude. It was a room of mutual gratitude. It was gratitude from the first responders back to our employees and from our employees back.
Each of those 4 employees who were injured on that day, they are back here at work full time. They are not in the building just yet, but they say they will be back in this space by the end of the month.
6531, person down between the building.
Officers couldn't get to the front lines without dispatchers
Middleton.
taking the first call.
Is she there for, does she work there, or did she say?
Danielle Kimball has been a calming voice
No, that's okay.
who provides quick judgment to get help where it's needed.
I've been doing it since I was 19, 20 years old. Everything is about timing. A second can mean the world of difference.
The building is all locked up. I'm with a couple of deputies.
September 19th, 2018. Each second meant a difference, as she had to send her officers to an active shooter inside an office building filled with people.
Is it hard being in the community and knowing these officers and having to send them to something like this?
Absolutely. And that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. But, I mean, I can't wrap them in bubble wrap and tell them not to go. It's just, I kept thinking about little tidbits of each officer and what I know about them. You know, one officer had a baby. One likes to show me Lego projects. An officer's about to retire. Yeah. So just little stuff kept kind of going through my head as I'm sending them out there to that. And then at the same time, I'm thinking about the people in that building and the amount of people that I'm asking, can you get out? And if they said no, I have to tell them, you need to hide.
Drop that gun now!
The person behind the voice that comforts people in crisis found herself not knowing what to expect.
Finding out that there was no casualties and that everybody was going to be okay. I think after I found that out for sure, I slept like a baby that night. I was so happy.
A helping hand to the community and to the department.
I have the satisfaction of thinking, you know, I did it. I took care of my people.
When they needed it most.
Any other dispatcher here would have done it.
He's not quite sure how many people were hit by the bullets. He estimated 3, maybe 4 people.
September 19th is a day that so many of us will never forget.
Including us. We were out there that time a year ago, September 19th, and 4 people were injured at that shooting at Paradigm when an employee came in and started shooting in that office in Middleton. Megan and I, once again, both there live for hours on end as those events unfolded that day. And today we're focusing on what we've learned since that shooting and, of course, the healing process in our community as well.
And we've seen so much of that in the past year. So throughout our morning show and then the rest of the NBC 15 newscast today, we'll be highlighting the acts of heroism that day 1 year ago. And we're also showing how the community has really come together since that shooting.
Amelia Jones is live for us right now just near the Paradigm office this morning in Middleton. Good morning to you, Amelia.
It's a very somber and emotional day ahead in Middleton. The Paradigm parking lot, it has 2 Middleton police squad cars in it, and it's going to be a difficult day probably for the employees of Paradigm, people who work near them, the community, and of course local law enforcement who were there on that day a year ago. Just in those months following this incident, it ignited a conversation in our community that people need to be prepared in case this were ever to happen to them. I spoke with Deputy Jocelyn Longland of the Dane County Sheriff's Office, who conducts their preparedness for active shooter training program. She told me in the 24 hours after the incident at Paradigm, she received 35 requests for active shooter training. In the last year, in fact, she's trained more than 17,000 people in our community to start mentally scripting, knowing what their options are, and being prepared to fight if that's what it comes down to.
I think the mindset's changing. We know that, we can't be passive. Your options, fight is obviously your last option, but it may be your only option. And we want people to go home safe every day when they go to work or go do things in the community.
Deputy Longley said she's already had businesses signed up for active shooter training into January 2020. She said this shows that this conversation, it's not over, it's ongoing. Live in Middleton, Amelia Jones, NBC 15 News.
Okay, thanks, Amelia. I know we had that training here at NBC 15 not long ago, and it was so informative and something that certainly makes you feel empowered. And prepared. Yeah, a lot of companies in our area went through the exact same training as Amelia just told us. And while the outside of that office building looks a lot like it did 1 year ago, a lot has changed, though. Paradigm is making sure that what happened a year ago really doesn't define who they are as a company. Right. So back in November, that business actually changed its name from WTS Paradigm to just Paradigm. Then in March, staff were able to move back into the office on Deming Way and have since brought nearly 120 new employees.
After the unthinkable happened, the company has found a way to create positivity out of pain. As NBC 15's Isabel Lawrence explains, a foundation has been formed to give back to the first responders who rushed to the scene.
Good.
That brown blur is Zeki.
He is a huge puppy.
He's the Middleton Police Department's canine officer.
He's too fast for his own good sometimes.
He joined the force after tragedy.
This was an event, a selfish event that occurred that affected and will affect people for the rest of their lives.
In dark times, Paradigm created light, starting a foundation to raise money for the emergency responders who helped them that day.
It would be normal for that company to hunker down and only think about their piece of the world, but they didn't.
Instead, they reached out, giving over $200,000 to first responders. $104,000 of that went to the Dane County Sheriff's Office.
Heavy level of ballistic armor, a helmet, and some other necessary equipment.
When there's an active shooter situation, seconds matter. NBC 15's Tim Elliott shows us a new product that's trying to cut down on response time so victims can get help faster.
When the Paradigm workplace shooting happened 1 year ago, a Middleton police officer was on that scene within 3 minutes. Now, that's pretty fast, but there's a product out there that's hoping to get police officers to the scene of a shooting even faster.
3, 2, 1.
This is a test to make sure that this sensor can hear that gunshot.
So we've tested weapons from a .22 rifle all the way up to a fully automatic M16.
Stacy Jacks is the owner of Trinity Gunshot Alarm System. She's a former teacher who felt the need to act.
And so after several of the mass shootings at the schools, as a teacher, I put myself in those schools and I thought, what would I do if a gunman came into my classroom? The idea of a fire alarm came to my head. Well, what about a sensor that detects a sound instead of smoke?
Gunshot detected.
This video shows that once the gunshot is detected,
West hallway.
Local law enforcement is then notified immediately with the location.
As we think back to 1 year ago when tragedy hit Middleton, a large discussion has been focused on gun control. NBC 15's Morgan Wolf looked into a recent proposal from Governor Tony Evers and why some people take issue with it.
Well, some say that it's time for Wisconsin lawmakers to close gun law loopholes with private sales not requiring background checks. Others say it's not about the guns, it's about the people.
There was someone with a gun.
People were hiding under desks. I know people were barricading themselves into rooms.
1 year later, Middleton is still healing.
I'm very frustrated that we have done nothing in the past year to change any of our laws when it comes to the ability for people to obtain weapons like this.
Investigators found that the Middleton shooter was a diagnosed schizophrenic who previously had his conceal and carry license revoked in South Dakota. He bought parts from a gun online and assembled it at his Madison home. Governor Tony Evers unveiled legislation calling for universal background checks to close loopholes with online and private sales in Wisconsin.
If we make sure that all purchases of frames and receivers for firearms are going through a background check, that's going to make sure that nobody who wouldn't pass a background check is going to have the parts they need to put together a firearm.
Attorney General Josh Kaul is standing by Evers' side. He supports a red flag law, too. It allows police or family members to petition to have someone's gun taken away if they are a danger to themselves or others. Nick Clark, president of Wisconsin Carry Incorporated, is against this legislation.
I think that that's starting the conversation at gun control when the conversation should be started way before that. And again, I think the conversation should start at self-defense.
Clark believes more people should have a conceal and carry to be better prepared. And gun control laws are a very slippery slope.
Like we say in the gun movement, registration leads to confiscation.
Speaker of the Wisconsin Assembly, Robin Voss, a Republican, isn't budging on gun laws. In August, he said, quote, "I will not entertain proposals to take away Second Amendment rights or due process. Hopefully, we can find common ground on the real problem by addressing the mental health issue facing Wisconsin." He reinforced his words with support from fellow Republicans on Thursday.
Do you think it's more of a problem with mental health?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I think this is where Republicans get it wrong. I think that we could spend $1 billion or $1 trillion on mental health in this issue, in this country, and I don't think that we would reach all the people at the depths of society that are willing to pick up a gun and go shoot someone. But look, there's millions and millions and millions of people in this country that have, quote, mental health issues, and they don't harm anybody.
As the debate over what needs to be done to stop gun violence rages on and Middleton heals, there's an undeniable truth facing communities across the country.
You know, we unfortunately have seen tragedy after tragedy around the country, and Wisconsin isn't immune to those tragedies.
In that day, something that affected the lives of many, many people in our area.